Good morning, everyone. This is, I was just saying up here, this is one of those Sundays where it's a 10-ish service. Everyone's chatty today, which is wonderful. It's wonderful. It means we're all feeling pretty good. So welcome and good morning to you all. Let's take a moment and sit back and just relax and feel good in this space. Yeah, no naps, Gary, no naps, except during the sermon. Just take me up on that, Pat. That's right. So take a few deep breaths. Let the Spirit move around you and through you. Feel the warmth of this room, metaphorically speaking. Feel the love of God surrounding you. And remind each other, as we do every week, that no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, I am welcome here.
The sacred reading today is from Deuteronomy 30:15 through 20. Look at what I have done for you. I've placed in front of you life and good, and death and evil. And I command you today, love God, your God. Walk in his ways, keep his commandments, regulations, and rules, so that you will really live exuberantly, blessed by God, your God, in the land you are about to enter and possess. But I warn you, if you have changed your heart, refuse to listen to obediently, and willfully go off to serve the worship other gods, you will most certainly die. You won't last long in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today. I place before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life so you and your children will live. And love God, your God, listening obediently to him, firmly embracing him. Oh yes, he is life itself. A long life settled on the soil that God, your God, promised you to give your ancestors, Abraham, Isaiah, and Jacob.
You know, sometimes the lectionary just doesn't give me wonderful choices. But this was the best of the four this week. And so this is, are you familiar with this passage? This is the third speech of Moses in Deuteronomy. So, and I chose the Message translation also because it was the most pleasant of all of the translations that I look at, right? And I don't do that just to make things watered down or to, get away from the actual scripture. But with all things in our faith and with all things in biblical texts, sometimes there's just a better way to say it. And so I like the way that the Message translation brings us to what this speech from Moses is really about. And in the literal sense, it's saying choose life or death. Well, which one do you think we're going to choose, right? But that's not really what Moses is saying here, is it? What is Moses asking us to choose between? What does he mean when he says life and death? It's not life and death in the literal sense. What do you feel that he's trying to say in this text?
Abundant life.
Abundant life. You could choose abundant life. Mm-hmm. Bob?
Spiritual life.
A spiritual life. That is very more of what he's trying to say here, because he uses the word, of course this has been translated, but the word obey comes out a lot, right? As does many texts in the Old Testament. But he's not necessarily using obey as like you have to follow the rules. He's speaking more about what Bob is alluding to, which is spiritual practices and keeping with your spiritual practices that are taught to you by God, and that you are showing some reverence to God by following your spiritual practices. That's part of what I take from it too, Bob. What else did you take from it, Elizabeth?
Well, reading the reading prior to coming in today and setting up everything, I also thought about the message that the UCC put out during the week, which was grow, and so I likened this in my mind to God planting a seed, and then hopefully will grow to fruition and blossom as intended, instead of being plucked out like a weed.
Right. Absolutely. That's exactly what they're going for here. And you see a bit of that in our opening liturgy, our gathering, our gathering words this morning. You heard a reference to one of Jesus' parables in there, didn't you? What was that? Lilies of the field. And it's too far away, I'm not going to go hunt it down. Was there a reference to mustard seed? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Yes, oh, we of mustard seeds and wheat, we of little faith and great, we come. Thanks, Elizabeth. What is that parable of the mustard seed that Jesus gives us? Say that again, Pat.
Have faith like a mustard seed.
Have faith like that little speck, right? That little speck can do a lot of things. So we even see some connections here between what Moses is saying and what Jesus later says, right? This life versus death, this, or as Elizabeth points out, this opportunity to grow out of something like the mustard seed or these lilies in the field. We grow into something beautiful, something vibrant, full of life. And you may have heard in my invocation this morning that message of there are things that are starting to grow beneath the snow of our lives. It wasn't speaking of this white stuff out here, but the snow of our lives, that sort of protective covering that we have going on around us. There are beautiful things growing underneath that, if we would only choose to let them sprout, right? What does that mean? Does that have any meaning to you? Do you connect that with this scripture this morning? Gary?
Well, I kind of see this as I am the one who makes the choice. I have a choice. I
Mhm.
can go choose to grow, or I can choose to swivel up and die.
Right.
So life versus death, but in how my life is portrayed is my choice.
Right. It is your choice, and it is Moses is also alluding to that fact that these are choices that we make. You can hear God calling you. It's what you choose to do after you've heard that call that makes the difference. Do you choose to have a life of spiritual practices, as Bob is saying, and to allow yourself to grow in your faith and as an individual, or do you choose to turn a deaf ear to it? Bob?
We're fortunate enough to contribute a little bit to our grandchildren's education. So I was real interested in our middle daughter's discussion with her 11th grade son. She said, "You've been given a lot, but both sets of grandparents and us, and we plan on doing that too. So you have to bloom a little bit, So it was almost like, and he's a good kid, he really
Yep.
is. But now he's got a heavy burden on his shoulders. It's like a lot of people are trying to help you. Don't just kick it away. And I even go back to Margaret's when she was in high school. She said, "Yeah, I'm not going to take chemistry. I don't think I'm going to take chemistry." And we said, "Oh no, you're not. You're taking chemistry." So it's kind of like there's a little bit of slight pressure to do it right, so you don't, it's that thing where they say, to whom much has been given, much is expected, or
Yes.
in that Charlie Brown thing about there's no heavier burden than a great potential. It's like-
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that ties, Bob, so closely to the title of my sermon today, which is, "Look at what I've placed before you." Look at what you've been given is the title of this section of Scripture in Deuteronomy. It's that feeling of God placing all of this opportunity before us and giving us gifts whether we realize them or not. And then what do we choose to do with those gifts, those talents, those experiences of our lives?
It's important to choose to live vibrantly, not just exist.
Right. Choosing to live vibrantly, not just simply exist. Living a full life. When I was up visiting Joanne at Mercy this week, I was talking with her daughters, and we were talking about, Joanne was telling them, that I had been doing this and that, and they said, "Aren't you do things other than be a minister?" And I said, my joke is always, "Yeah, I'm trying to do everything I can before I die," In so many ways, that's true. For those of you who have known me for a very long time, this is not a new thing for me, right? I'm going to live my life fully, no matter how tired it makes me. But there's a lot of truth to be said there, right? We can choose to just exist and go about our daily life and, go to our workplaces or go do the things that we do and create our little widgets and move them along the conveyor belt. Or we can live a life that is full and that God intended us to live. God didn't give us these opportunities and the gifts of knowing that we have unconditional love and that we have possible opportunities out here everywhere to use that love, or the talents that we have that I call gifts. We have these opportunities. God didn't give us those for us to, sit on our brain and do nothing with them. It is a true calling, I believe. We're each called to do something. And it's that listening to those opportunities, listening to that call from God, and actually taking a moment to look at what's been placed before us. Because don't we often go through life with blinders on? Like horses that are being led side by side, we've got those blinders. We can only see right here. We don't turn our heads and look at the world around us or look at the people around us and fully embrace these other opportunities to be in community with each other, to extend that love or that concern together, to go out and serve in the way that you were intended, which each of us does this in our own way, or we can do it in our own way. We're not all designed to get up here and sing beautiful music. We're not all designed to stand here and just talk, whatever this is that I'm doing. And we're not all designed to go out and work in soup kitchens and pantries, but we're all designed to do something that embraces the gifts we're given and combines that with our daily spiritual practices, those practices that connect us to God and open our ears and eyes to what God is placing before us. That's how we figure out what we're supposed to do. And I'm thinking about living this full life, and this is 2 weeks in a row, I'm going to utilize my grandmother, but she's at least sitting here this time. You don't all have to go squeal. But I'm looking at her shirt, and it's cheering me up. Not that I needed it cheered up. I'm feeling great today, but if you can't see her shirt, it says, "All ducked out and nowhere to go," and it has a picture of a duck on it. And it's just bringing me so much joy, but that's a person who's living their life fully to wear a shirt like that, right? That's a happy thing. What are you doing in your life to live it fully? What are you doing in your life to embrace the gifts you've been given? Are you opening your eyes or being open to the idea even of opening your eyes and your ears to what God has placed before you? Are you open to these things? Or are you closed down, looking away, saying, "Not me, not my circus, not my monkeys"? Or are you willing to let down your guard, to brush off that snow, and to allow yourself to bloom, to allow yourself to come into what God has intended you to be, to go do what God has intended you to do, to look at what has been placed before you and to act upon it, to embrace it and live life fully. My hope for each of us is that through our spiritual practices, that obeying that Moses is talking about, by trying to maintain that open telephone line between us and God, that we will be more open to listening to these messages, that we will slowly peel those blinders back and be people who are willing to say, "Here I am, God, send me." May we all be more open to the ability to take what's in front of us and run with it. Amen.